Hey everyone, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. A lot of people really enjoyed the interviews I did with William, and you guys requested that I would have him on again. So today we have a part 3 video about his last and final encounter with the Sasquatch being. William has read several reports from his area and suspects it's the same individual he has encountered in the past. The Sasquatch appeared to be friendly to the campers, and I find it odd a Sasquatch would want to hang out with people all night, but these testimonies are out there. I always think back to the miner story out west where he was abducted by a clan of Sasquatch and gave him chewing tobacco in order to make his escape. I mean, I've heard of stories where people have had juveniles inside their home watching SpongeBob, so you know what, William's story may not be that far out there. Alright, let's get into it, guys. Alright, William, welcome back to Sasquatch Theory, and it is an absolute pleasure to have you back on the show tonight for a part 3 episode. William, if you would, tell us more about your Bigfoot encounters, and I would like to pick up where we last left off.
Oh, goodness, Miguel. It's good to be back. I appreciate the feedback. Everybody's been very nice, and it's very encouraging, but it's also unexpected to be as good as it was. So this part of it is a second encounter with the same Sasquatch that I'm going to call Erie. And this was on another camping trip. I believe it was at the end of the summer of 98. Something in my head wants to question whether it was then or the early part of the summer of 99. Forgive me for ambiguity on the dates. I'm basing it basically on when I had injuries and surgeries, because I remember them. And I believe this was before I had a shoulder surgery, which was at the end of 98. And the knee surgery I was in the summer 97. So this would be then the same summer in that case as part 2, but that was much earlier. That was like a late spring trip, and this was toward the end of summer, but the gate was still closed on the Forest Road 71, so it wouldn't have been after September 30th, because I think that's when they opened the gate up, so that hunters can get back in there. And like I said, it's just a road you don't want to have two vehicles meet on. It happens a lot, but then somebody's backing up, and it's, recoveries back there are really a nuisance. Not a bad road, though. It's actually a really well-maintained, good road, but it's not fun to meet someone on it. And people, take vehicles that are a little bit, you certainly don't want to take a camper back there, but people do it. They'll take campers anywhere they can get their truck. So anyway, and this was a trip that we wanted, me and my buddy, who I call Alan, wanted to take another friend, actually 2 friends on. And we convinced them to go up there. I hadn't really said much about the Sasquatch. My buddy Alan had, and I kind of shrugged it off, said, well, if you want to go up there, you'll find out how cool of a place it is. And I just thought the world of Roaring Plains still do. And we had convinced 2 of our friends finally to go up there. I'm not sure of what they believed as far as that story or not, but I hadn't said much about it. But they had been told that there was one up there, and they probably didn't think much of it. They probably didn't know if I'm sure they wondered why is he telling me this story, but I kind of just was like, yeah, well, if you want to go to Roaring Plains, then let's go up there. And I was never concerned for anyone's safety or anything like that. To me, it was just like, okay, yeah, you might encounter him, and that's part of the whole deal. That's part of being up there. And I really took that for granted at the time, and I regret doing that, because I squandered a lot of opportunity, I think, doing that. But anyway, so me and my buddy Alan went up there on the first night. We went up and camped alone, and it was the second night we were supposed to meet our friends at the end of that road where it gets to the pipeline swap. So it's the end of, I think it's Forest Road 71. I think it's 71. And it's right there where the pipeline swap is. There's a little area where people can park and stuff. But the road was closed still. So I know it wasn't late in the fall or after September 30th, because I believe that's when they opened that road up. So my thinking on this is like either late August or early September in '98, and we said, well, we'll meet you up there around, I don't know, 6:30, 7 p.m., a little before dark. Days a little shorter then, but not too bad. So we'll still have some daylight, and we knew they wouldn't get up there too early. And I'm going to call our other buddy who ended up not going all the way. And we didn't even see, me and I didn't even see him. I'm going to call him David, but I'm going to use the real names for the dogs. And so we camped the first night, didn't encounter Erie, but we did hear him. And he was, I don't know how far off in the distance, but it was something I had never heard this scream before. But we hear something way off in the distance that night. This is our first night camping. It sounds like a race car engine being revved up off in the distance, or maybe you could say like an air raid siren. And it had a really long sustain on it, and it was a hell of a kind of an ascending sort of, scream, I guess. But it, like listening to it, I've heard other people here say that they've heard something like that too, and they describe it the same way. They say it sounds like a race car engine being revved up off in the distance. Of course, there's no race cars up there. I mean, there's a road that's blocked, and then there's a forest road that's, I don't know, maybe 4 miles from our campsite, maybe 2 by air, because the roads, the trails and roads are pretty straight. So around 2 miles by air. You're not. We're like, what in the hell? And my buddy's like, yeah, maybe that's the big guy. And I said, well, that's a hell of a scream. That's a hell of a sound. I mean, it's got a sustain on it of well over 10 seconds, and it just keeps getting higher and higher, or let's say more and more intense. I don't want to try to imitate it over the phone. It would sound terrible, and it wouldn't give really the impression. But there have been some recordings I've heard that sound pretty close to it, with a little, honestly, less sustain. So we hear that and wonder if he's going to visit or show up. And we never see him that night. We sleep, and, okay, he doesn't come around. We don't know if he's going to or not necessarily. And we do have a dog with us. And Alan's dog is named Luna, and George's dog is named Zoe. And they are sisters, and they're like border collie lab mixes. And so George is going to bring his dog up too, because they went everywhere with their dogs. And so anyway, come the next evening, we go down to the road, and we're waiting for our buddies to come up the road. We're down there probably around 6 or so. I think we've just been hiking around the area during the day of the meadows. And I don't remember if we went up into Flat Rock Plains that day or not. Honestly, I think we just kind of collected wood and hung around. I don't remember going up into Flat Rock Plains. That's on the other end of Roaring Plains anyway. And that's not a long hike out, but anyway, so here comes George up the road, pretty much on time too. And his dog's always with him. And he gets up there, hey, man, good, you made it, and where's David? And he said, man, that's the scariest walk I've ever taken in my life. Something followed me in the woods the whole way. And I said, yeah, well, okay, so forest spirits around. I said, where's the last time you noticed them? And he said, just back not that far. And he said his dog, when she walked up the road with him, was, as he put it, walking on his feet, so she wouldn't get out from in between his legs. He said she ran up in the woods once and came running back. I don't know about whimpering, but she came running back and pretty much just stayed right there, like under his feet or under his legs and between his legs and on his feet, or however, dogs do if they're scared. I guess they'll do this. And so I said, well, don't worry, man. There's nothing to be worried about. And my buddy Alan's like, yeah, Will likes that thing. And I said, well, he's been pretty cool, and he's part of the thing. He's part of the experience here, but you don't have to worry about anything. Now, Luna's more like the alpha female of the dogs, and she's more likely to be a little bit aggressive. But she's still not mean and aggressive, but she's more likely to be protective. And so she notices that he's there, and that she's never encountered him before. And she and Zoe following behind run into the woods, and I call them back real quick. I said, y'all get back here. I call them back, and they come running back into the pipeline swath. And I said, well, he must be right inside the woods. That would be Erie. Well, we also got the story as to what happened with our other buddy. And they rode up in the same truck and started going up the road. And I don't know why Erie would have been down there at the where they parked, but I guess he was down there near where the vehicles park, which is 3.5 miles from where we were. That's about how long that forest road is. And our buddy David got nervous. He got scared, and he went back to his vehicle, and he had a .40 caliber handgun. And he got that and just, held it on him. And by the way, we don't have any firearms on us. It's not that I, was somehow just not, it wasn't a national park, and I'm, fine carrying firearms, just never carried one up there because the only thing we really worried about dealing with was bear. And even there, it was just, we didn't really worry about it too much. And I never carried a handgun up there, let alone a rifle. But anyway, he had a 40 gun. David had a 40 cal, and he starts walking up the road, and something's making noise up in the woods, and he just gets scared and said, man, I'm going back to the truck. I'm going to spend the night in the truck, and you guys, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll just stay at the truck. I won't leave. So he goes back to the truck, and George continues walking up the road with his dog. And the story from David is he got back to his truck, and something big in the woods, something he said very big, was behind the trees. And he just held his gun up in the air. I don't know that he fired it or not, but he did, and it pissed off Big Guy a lot. And he said whatever that was just got fucking pissed. And I was like, well, yeah, you waved a gun at him. I guess he did. And he was just like, man, I left. So he gets in the truck, and instead of staying the night in the truck, he gets scared and leaves. And so now George gets nervous going up the trail too once he starts getting paralleled. And he decides to go back to the truck and just say, screw it. Now that would have screwed with us because we would have been like, me and Alan would have been like, God bless what happened to him. I wonder if we should walk back and, see if they're okay, walk all the way down the road, it's 3.5 miles, and see if they're even there. Or, if they got lost or something, the directions are pretty clear. So I would have kind of doubted that. But George gets back to the truck and he doesn't get back to the truck. He finds the truck gone. So he's now forced to walk up the road, which he didn't really want to do. So he has to walk up that 3.5 mile road with big old Erie, who he doesn't really know who this is or what this is, paralleling him the whole way, and I guess here and there throwing a pebble out in the road, as he put it. Never threw a rock at him to hurt him, but he did throw rocks out in the road, and it just, it terrified him. He was absolutely scared. Now, like I said, I never told him what was going on up there as far as Sasquatch or wild people or whatever, because it wasn't something he knew about or was familiar with, and I just thought, well, other people hike up there. This is a pretty common area to go hiking and camping. So I've never heard of anybody having a problem and don't have any reason to anticipate one. And I don't even know that we're actually going to see them. But, I don't see the point warning somebody and getting them all nervous about something. But, whether I should have or shouldn't have, I didn't. So I don't really know how much he was expecting that or knew about that. I don't think he really expected what happened, to be followed up the road by something very big in the forest that walked when he walked. And it's very rough in that area. There's a lot of red spruce and rhododendron. There's some oaks and beech and maple and stuff like that too. The further you get up the road, the more it just becomes spruce, though. But they're mixed in, and the rhododendrons are heavy in places. So it's not an open woods that you can see up in, and it's not dark yet, but it's getting darker as he's getting up the road. It's getting around. I think we met somewhere around 6:30 or 7 o'clock. So that time of year, it's still pretty light, but in the woods it can look a little bit darker. And so, I mean, looking back, I imagine that was awful terrifying, but to his credit, he made it. And I said, well, we're going to have company tonight, obviously, up at the camp. And he was just like, dude, I just, are you, he didn't really want to keep going, but we were like, nah, we're going back to the camp. All our stuff's up there, and you're here now. Everything's cool. And he's not really sure yet. I don't think he's actually seen Erie, so he's not sure yet what's followed him or what there is, but he knows it can throw rocks, and he knows it's got his dog terrified. And he also knows that, he's already been through what he considered to be the scariest walk of his life. And so we walked up to the campsite at the Meadows, which is up the pipeline swath, and then when you get to the rim there, like the eastern kind of ridge or front or whatever, you make that left. And I think it was when we got into the campsite that finally Erie came around visibly. And Alan saw him behind the thicket of spruces that's right in front of the campsite there. And I walk around there, and it's kind of funny because I walk around there and I look around and I can't see him. I'm like, where the hell is he? And he said, look up, man. He's right behind the trees right there. And I look up and I see his face poking out, and he's got this smile on his face. He's not looking aggressive or angry or anything. And I'm going, good Lord, that's, pretty good hiding for somebody that's over 7 feet tall. And then here come the dogs. Now that I'm between them and Erie the Sasquatch, here they come carrying on, and it's of course Luna in front and Zoe behind her, and they're carrying on. And I turn around and yell at them. I'm like, Luna, Zoe, get back in the tent. Get the f- back, because I'm worried about their safety. I don't think that he's going to hurt them, because I don't think they're going to actually threaten him, but I don't want to take any chances there. Any more than I'm already taking. Everybody listening is probably going, well, you've already taken a whole lot of chances, Will. But, I was more or less figured, okay, these dogs aren't that big. It's not like they're big old Rottweilers. They're really not going to do anything to him. Hopefully he doesn't just get angry. And he never did. He never did anything to hurt the dogs. But it's funny, though, that Luna, Zoe get back to the tent, somehow that phrase stuck in his head. Because I'd say about 30 minutes later, when I'm sitting over there on my favorite rock with my buddy Alan, we hear the dogs start carrying on again, and we hear some voice that sounds somewhere between Darth Vader and Andre the Giant and something else, with almost a metallic resonance scream at the dogs. And it was funny because you could tell what he was saying was an attempt at Luna and Zoe get back to the tent. And that was, pretty surreal. I mean, that's of all the, things going on, that was like, wow, now he knows how to yell at the dogs. That was my buddy said. He said, oh, great. Now he knows how to yell at the dogs. And I said, well, good. That ought to confuse them pretty well to, they're like, what is this thing? And now it's yelling at them in a somewhat, not very clear, but nonetheless, I don't know if they understood, could make out his articulation, but, it's an attempt anyway to call him by name and tell him what to do, which I kind of thought that was funny. And so we've already, I believe, got a good bit of firewood up there and make a fire. And he's not just hanging around, like walking around the camp. He's hanging around that spruce thicket and just, we know he's there, but he's not just, comfortably in the camp at this point at all times. Eventually he did get that way. And he very much got on their nerves. I mean, I know that, so George was freaking out. George was going, you guys are acting like this is normal. He's not even supposed to exist. And it was much more theatrical than that. He was just like, You guys are acting like this is normal. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. He's not even supposed to exist. What the, he's absolutely losing his shit. Like, what the hell? You guys are acting like there's nothing going on here. There's a fucking Bigfoot in the damn camp, and he's yelling at the dogs, and I just can't process this. And he did. He took several hours to process it. And I said, well, I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of wild people, but, he's one of them, and he's a big one. And George was just, his mind was completely blown. I mean, he had this thing parallel him in the woods all the way up, and you think I would have kind of took pity on him or felt bad or sorry for him and all that. I didn't, because I never once thought his safety was jeopardized, and it wasn't. So I, was like, yeah, man, I mean, why don't you tell him he's not supposed to exist? I mean, he's right here. You can holler at him. And so he's just like, God, you guys are acting like this is normal. And I said, well, I mean, it's kind of normal up here for us. At least it has been the, last time and this time. So, he didn't really like him around. It wasn't like he was like, oh boy, this is so cool. We get to, have a, camp with a Sasquatch. It was more, just trying to process that, okay, first of all, he exists, and he's not threatening me, but he's very pushy. And he understands, too, that Alan and I are not really scared of him because we know who he is, but he understands that George is. So, of course, he f***s with him. He comes over towards him, and George just like turns his back and just says, just leave me alone. Just leave me alone. I'm like, man, he's not going to do anything to you. Just, calm down for God's sakes. I mean, you've been here for now, a couple hours and you're fine. And he's like, I don't care. I just don't want him around me. All right, bro, whatever. So I look over at him and say, well, he doesn't want to be friendly right now. Maybe just leave him alone. I don't know if Erie understood me or not, but he kind of, okay. Whatever. He just kind of, he never really, like I said, he never really tried to threaten or really harass George at all, but he understood that he was freaked out by him and kind of made use of that. He also knew that the dogs were freaked out by him. We put the dogs in the tent eventually, well, pretty early on, and every so often, if he wanted to, he'd go by and slap the tent to stir the dogs up, which got me annoyed because the dogs would absolutely freak out. Now, this is not the little 3-man Coleman dome tent I used to have. Now I got a 5-person North Face tent, which is an awesome tent because it's a 5-man tent, which means for 3 people it's actually, really comfortable. There's plenty of room in there. It's, for 2 it's great. And you could even have the dogs in there. But the one dog was absolutely terrified of him. Zoe just was in there scared to death. She didn't even want to come out the tent to go to the bathroom. In fact, at one point she shit in the tent, and I don't know if that's when he slapped it and stirred him up or not. Luna just sat in the tent growling the whole time, with like a low growl the whole time. Just, I mean, she was not happy about this, and I just am kind of like, well, you guys are here. I mean, what are you gonna, just deal with it, But dogs are not too fond of these things because I've had dogs around them, and I never had a dog that was like, oh yeah, cool, it's okay because my owner says it's okay. I mean, they just but I never had one hurt one of my dogs. Even though as a kid growing up, I did hear of somebody up the road losing a dog to one. That was the story anyway. That one of the wild people killed one of the Jets' dogs. That was back in Rappahannock, and that would be part of part 1. But that was, I don't know if that's what happened. I didn't bring that up in the story. But I'm not going to try to go through the whole night in sequence because it would take way too long. But a lot of really cool stuff happened that night, thanks to Big Erie wanting to put on somewhat of a show of what he can do. We were able to kind of communicate with him enough to get him to tell us that they have words for things. Because, I mean, I was pointing, so we were, but I was pointing at trees and getting him to tell me what he called them. And I remember none of this. I remember the Acona or Lakota and Lakota thing because there were words that were similar to it that I could use as reference points. With this time, I'm pointing at a spruce tree and an oak tree. It's not a red. I think it's like a post oak up there, actually. Could have been a red oak, but it was a smaller one. And he had names for the tree. And then I said, no, but this one's different than this one. And I point to the spruce. It's, got needles on it. And I point to the oak there. And I'm like, well, what's the name for this? Or what's the name for this? And we were able to actually communicate that well. I was able to communicate that well. I remember none of the words that he used, which is really unfortunate because I would love to know what he called the spruce and what he called the oak. And I don't know if it was just what he called an oak tree or a tree with leaves and what he called a spruce tree or a tree with needles. I'm not sure. But there are a lot of blueberries up there. He had a name for them. There are ferns up there, which now are far more overgrown of the place. He had names for them. There's some mountain ash up there. I don't remember if he had a name for that, honestly. I told him what we called them, and that was pretty interesting because there was this kind of, okay, we're gonna interact a little bit better and learn a few things and also tell you what we call things. At one point, we were also imitating animals and asking him what he called them, and then we could make the kind of the mime for that we would eat them. So I told him that we'd like to eat deer, and that was something that he ended up remembering because later on that night he brought a deer into the camp with its head absolutely destroyed and threw it on the ground right next to the fire. Now, the fire was with spruce wood, so it wasn't very hot, and it's tough to cook that stuff right without enough, consistent heat. But the head of the deer, I don't know how he killed it. It looked like he took there are a lot of big flat rocks on our mountaintops in West Virginia. I can't remember what they're called, but the Black Mountain and Pocahontas has them all over the Dolly sides. It looked like he put the deer's head on one and took another one and smashed it with it. I don't know if that's what he did, but there was no bony integrity in that deer's head. You could tell it was a head. It wasn't decapitated, but it was completely smashed. I've heard of stories of them grabbing a hog or something by the hind legs and smacking it against a tree. He'd had to smack it against a tree a couple times to do this because that deer's head was completely destroyed. And I told my buddies, I said, well, y'all, because I was at the time, I think I was like taking a nap or something when he did that, and they said he had brought the deer in, and I hadn't gone and looked at it yet. I said, I guess cut some of it up in pieces, the leg or the shoulder or something, and we'll cook a couple pieces of deer, which neither George nor Alan did a very good job of. But Erie decided he wasn't going to wait around for us to process the deer and decided to eat it. Now, I didn't see this initially. I was, like I told you, I was laying down taking a nap at one point because, it's just been a long day and I knew I was going to be up most of the night. People were like, well, how are you going to take a nap when you got a Sasquatch in the camp? Honestly, at this point, I'm taking the whole thing for granted too much. And like I said, there's a lot of, regret in that, but, that's what I did. So I'm like, yeah, he'll be there. When I get up, he'll still be there. He, according to them, and I saw the aftermath of it, bit into the thing and just like an animal tore its abdominal cavity open, went for the heart and liver first, and just proceeded to eat it and make a bloody mess of his face. So when I finally do get up and say, all right, I'll come over there and, fix the, effing deer up since you all are too lazy to do it, I stand up. The fire is now it's dark, but the firelight is illuminating his face, and he's standing with his back to the little spruce grove there. And I look up and I see this Sasquatch, with blood all over his face, and he's got this shit-eating grin on his face, and the firelight is illuminating it, and I'm just going, geez, this has got to be the craziest I've ever seen, and no one would believe this. Absolutely no one would believe this. I said, guys, nobody would believe this if we told them. I said, just let's not tell them. If they want to come up here, they can come up here. But I'm not going to tell him all about this stuff because it's just too damn crazy. And it's probably why I've waited so long to tell the story online, because I've, seemed to wait until there's a saturation almost of Bigfoot stories online. I mean, most of them are either horror stories or they're stories of people being chased by them or scared out of an area by them. And, here I'm telling you that, well, I met a friendly one, and he's also, he's somewhat of a jokester, somewhat of a performer, and I don't feel a little bit threatened by him at this point. I mean, on the first encounter with him in Roaring Plains, which actually wasn't the first encounter with him. I told you I first encountered him in Shenandoah Park. I did about everything I could to piss him off. If he was going to do any harm to me or anyone else, he would have done it there, and he didn't. So, I mean, at this point, it's just like, he's kind of a buddy, really. A wild one, but he's a buddy nonetheless, and there's no reason to feel threatened by him or endangered by him. But watching him stand there with this grin on his face and his blood, because like I said, his face is more or less hair-free, but he's got the hair under his chin, and he's got this big old lamb chops, and he's got all this blood on it. So it's quite an image. If I could ever get somebody who was good at sketching to do that one, that would be a good one. But my first concern was, are the dogs okay? Yeah, the dogs are fine there in the tent. Okay, good. And then I went over and looked at the deer that was, torn open and just absolutely mangled. But the head of it, like I said, was just absolutely destroyed. That was pretty wild. And I cut a few pieces of them and put them in the fire. Nobody else had any appetite after watching all of that. And at some point, Erie was just like, okay, you guys are done with whatever I'm giving you here. Because we had given him food before. I guess he was repaying us. And he took the deer away. I don't know where he took it. Where he put it, but he did take it away. But I was jumping around a little bit with the deer, but yeah, we also talked about other animals. We tried to mimic the raccoons and make the little, like the dark part in the eye, and told them what we called them, and the possum with the tail. I mean, there's some animals that's pretty easy to kind of mime or whatever. And he got really excited when we gave him a name, and he'd give us a name. And, back then we didn't have phones with recording and all that on them. I mean, they did exist, recording devices, obviously, but we didn't have anything like that. So I don't remember any of these terms. But he had names for all of that stuff. He had names for rabbits. He had names for raccoons, names for possums, name for deer, name for bear. We talked about shooting them. He pointed to a place on his right side where it looked like it was, I think he was trying to explain to us that he had been shot. So it looked like a healed over wound. I mean, you wouldn't know whether it was from a stick or from anything else or even an animal or something, but it had healed over okay. And when we kind of made the mime having a gun and shooting a gun and that kind of thing, he pointed to that and more or less told us, I guess, in his way that he had been shot at one time. I couldn't quite tell where. He just, in terms of where he had been when he got shot, he pointed out toward the east. So I don't know if that was on his journey over from Shenandoah Park or if it was on some foray he made at some other time. But it was on kind of on his right side, on his lats. And of course, he's got pretty heavy fur, but it's visible there. There's an area where it was like a spot there. So don't know what he was shot with. I don't think it was too high of a caliber, but yeah. So he hung around for most of the night, and Alan proceeded to teach him a lot of bad words in English, which I don't have to go through them. Just use your imagination. And he did a very good job at reproducing them. That was good. I thought, well, that's great. So if any other campers are up there and encounter him, then his vocabulary is going to be very shocking to them now. So, and he used them over and over. So, I mean, all the kind of things that you think somebody would do to just, take advantage of a situation to be silly. Yeah, of course, my buddy was the one to do that. Don't know where else to go with this. We kind of spent the night doing that. I think at one point both of them just wanted him to leave because anything you got into, he wanted to see it. I mean, once he was comfortable early on in the night, that afternoon, that evening, he hung kind of back from the camp. But once he got comfortable, you couldn't get rid of him. And if you got into something, if we got the stereo out, because I still had I think it was a JVC bazooka. I want to say it wasn't JB. I think it was a JVC bazooka. He liked that. He liked we played music on it. He'd point to it and kind of more or less say, play something on there. And
so this is the same Sasquatch that you encountered before, and
yeah,
now you're encountering the Sasquatch in different areas. How far away was this encounter from the last one?
No. This was in the same area. The first time I encountered him was at the shelter by Mary's Rock on the AT in Shenandoah Park. And he was, younger than, although actually I take that back. I think he was the same one that followed me and my dog on Robertson Mountain, which I had to correct because in part one I said it was Corbin Hollow and Corbin Mountain. Corbin Mountain was the one to the north. It was Corbin Hollow and Robertson Mountain. And there was something else about that I forgot. There's a small part of that circuit hike where you walk on Old Rag Fire Road. And once I went back and looked at the map and realized, dude, that wasn't Corbin Mountain, that was Robertson Mountain. I said, oh, yeah, because it's really a rough trail. He would not walk on the fire road. When I got to the fire road, and I was with my dog then, this was years before that. He was a younger one and much smaller. He stayed a good ways off the road, but he paralleled me while I walked that 200-yard stretch on the fire road and didn't get behind me on the trail until I was on Robertson Mountain. I'm pretty sure that's the same one. And then later on, I spent the night up at the shelter at Mary's Rock, and that's when he kind of picked the end of the table up and woke me up at 3 a.m. or whatever. But the only reason I knew he was the same one in Roaring Plains is because of the name I gave him. And I didn't call him Erie then. When I told you I was waiting for the Morning Star. Anybody's heard part one, it was Lucifer. So when I get woken up by the table getting picked up at the end, and not that high, I didn't fall off the table, but I had to grab my Discman. I said, oh, Lucifer or something like that, like something out of a song. And he remembered that. So when I encountered him in Roaring Plains on the first camping trip that I talked about in part two, he pointed to the east and he said Lucifer. And I said, how do you know that? And my buddy Alan had that, he could have that mind speak thing with him where he kind of knew what he was thinking. I said, well, what do you mean you know what he's saying? I can't explain it. I just know what he's saying. I know what he's thinking. And I can't explain it. It just comes to me. But it was very accurate. And he said, he knows you. And I said, he's the same one? And that blew my mind because I'm going, how did you get here and why? And, part two, I discussed that a good bit. I couldn't understand how I said, well, okay, it's the furthest ridge you see from the Blue Ridge and vice versa is the Allegheny Front. If you look to the west from the Blue Ridge, is the furthest ridge you see. But does that mean he would go to it? And why would he do it and then end up running into me? I don't know. I can't explain that. But yeah, he's the same one from that trip. That's why we're totally not really freaked out by him. And his mentality, it's a lot of people make these guys out to be a lot of different things. And I don't want to attack people's models for explanation. But, my buddy Alan kind of said that to him, his mentality, he said, was something like a kid and a dog. Not necessarily a kid with a dog, but a kid and a dog. He said, in some ways, he's like a dog. In some ways, he's like a kid. He's interested in everything you get into. He gets very, excited. He's also, like I said, he wants to do stuff to be funny, smack the tent and stir the dogs up. And, bother the guy who's scared of him, but not really threaten him, just kind of annoy him, and he's got this kind of way about him. So, I don't know, when people talk about them being connected to aliens and everything like that, I'm not here to dispute the other people's models because I can't explain everything about them. My own position is that they're a holdover from probably bands of some branch of Homo erectus, which of course are a third or a quarter their size, that may have made it over during one of the interglacials and were part of the megafauna. But then there's a lot of questions there. Why haven't, skeletons been found, or have they been found and covered up? That's very possible. But they are definitely hominids, and they have a lot of human-like traits, a lot of primate-like traits. But their bipedalism is also very clear. They're not apes in that they can kind of, I've seen them where they will get down. He would walk on 2 feet and 2 legs beautifully and gracefully, and could run like, oh my God. I didn't tell you in part 2, one of the things that my buddy noticed from hanging in the tent instead of being out there roughhousing with us was that it looked like he took off at full stride, at full speed. It looked like he took off, but it was really about second stride, almost the second step. Now, I've had friends who are good athletes, and it's about their third step that they're at full speed. But this guy's 7 foot plus, and he's probably somewhere around 400 pounds or more, and very muscular, very lean. He's not really big and bulky. And when he moves, it looks like he just takes off at full speed. So when people talk about that, it was, if somebody was watching, my buddy said, no, I watched him pretty close. It looked like about second stride that he was at full speed. Now, on this third trip, I didn't want to play around like that because I had multiple shoulder dislocations of both shoulders. And he kind of wanted to roughhouse and throw me around and kick the crap out of me like he did in my other camping trip that I talked about in part 2. And I was just I didn't do it. Now, he didn't force me to either. He didn't grab me and throw me around. He wanted to roughhouse and kind of play like a bro. And I was like, pointed at my shoulder and like, nah, man, I can't. I just can't. I'm tired of dislocating my shoulders, and it's enough to put a backpack on. So I think that was somewhat disappointing to him, honestly.
Yeah.
He was kind of persistent about that, but I just couldn't,
Whenever
I had to.
The creature pointed up at that star, do you think it was trying to tell you that maybe that's where it came from?
Well, I would have maybe thought that if I had no other context, except I remembered having encountered one at the shelter, and at that, calling him Lucifer, and when he pointed to the east and said that, it was very clear there. Plus, like I said, my buddy's got this, kind of mind speak thing with him, and he said, yeah, he knows you. He knows who you are. He's met you before. And it took me a minute to kind of piece everything together. And I was like, oh my God, you're the same one. Well, how in the hell did you get here? So no, I would have, if that was the only thing I had going. If I'd never seen him before and never encountered him, he pointed out there and said that, I would have been really kind of like, well, what's going on here? But no, that story, I was part of it, so I could piece that together. So no, I don't think he was saying he came from the stars. Now, I did talk about the 3 lights, and I still to this day have no idea what they were. I haven't figured that out. I don't even try to. And I never saw them on this trip or any other.
Mm-hmm.
He did like them, though. They were friends of his, and he got very angry when I threw a rock, one, and then when I picked up another rock, he gave me that growl warning, like, bro, put that rock down. Mm-hmm. And I did. Well, you were asking me about his origin in the stars and that kind of thing, and I said earlier I didn't want to get into an argument because none of us know for sure. Mm. But I'm very well convinced that they're not only are they hominids, but they're from another line that's probably related to ours at some point. And I'm accepting an evolutionary, human anthropology there, which some people may not, but. Coming from kind of the background I have in academics, not an expert on human paleontology, but I certainly studied it a bit and the genetics of it and that kind of thing. You know, we don't have a genome for Homo erectus. We do for Denisovans and Neanderthals. And I haven't really looked at a lot of the stuff that's coming out on DNA samples from Sasquatch. And I know David Paulides and has talked about this. There's some other, some DNA project going on regarding that. I've also heard that most of the time that samples are sent in that aren't bears or something like that, that aren't just another animal. It'll come back unknown hominid. But I know that, we don't really have a sequence for any Homo erectus. I mean, we can infer it because we're, pretty close genetically even to our, 12 million year ago common ancestor having chimpanzee or something like that. We have a common ancestor. We're not from chimpanzees. We have a common ancestor 12 million years ago. So I accept the standard for the most part, with a few, tweaks and stuff, human evolution model. That, like I said, not everyone does. There are a lot of people that have a lot of good questions about that, and I'm not dismissing any of that. But, I try to see these guys in terms of that. However, clearly, I do think something else is aware of them. And this is where those lights I saw and a lot of the other stories that other people have, you say you've seen lights. I'm not dismissing that. I don't think that's where they're from personally. I think something else is aware of them, knows about them, and also knows that they're largely a mystery to us and has in some ways befriended them. And the reason I say that is because he was clearly saw himself as friendly towards whatever those lights were, or wherever they were from, or whatever their status was. They were not bothering him. I thought they were, but they were not. And anyone who's listening to this and doesn't know what I'm talking about, you'd have to go back and listen to part 2, because that's where the light story came in. They baffled me. They were to me, that was the weirdest thing I saw, not Sasquatch. I grew up knowing about wild people. But those lights, and he was kindly disposed towards them and was not into me throwing rocks at them. And so
you said that they were his friends. That's what he said.
Well, that was what he said. That was more or less how he indicated, and then again, I don't understand his language. I really don't remember if he used the same word for them that he used for us, because he used the word, like I said, it was like a coda or Lakota, but his consonant intonation was a little bit difficult to make out there. Incredibly deep voice, but also with almost a metallic resonance. But I mean, he ate, like we eat. He went to the bathroom like we do. He got very annoyed that we like to just go and piss right outside the tent. That annoyed him. He did one other thing up there. I'm jumping around in this not very sequential, this part 3. You have to forgive me, but there was just quite a bit of stuff going on. A few other things I want to talk about. One thing he did, which I found absolutely disgusting, was, one of the dogs, probably Zoe, in the tent. And I don't know if it was when he smacked it or what, but George, or one of the two, cleaned it up with a T-shirt and then took the T-shirt and threw it just outside the tent. They were in a bad mood already about the whole thing. They really weren't cool about having him up there. I'll go into a little more of that. But I'm like, he lives here. This is his home. What are you going to do? Tell him to leave his home? I mean, we're the ones camping up here. This is where he lives, So, it's kind of annoying to me that they just wanted him to just go away and go back to wherever he stays and leave them alone. I thought, well, God, I mean, talk about not really taking advantage of an opportunity here. Who gets to hang out with a Bigfoot? You guys are getting to hang out with him, and one of you just doesn't even want him there. This is kind of ungrateful to me, especially since you're not in any danger. But the dog shit in the T-shirt got thrown outside the tent, probably 10 or 12 feet away from the tent. And Erie evidently did what some animals do, and this is maybe where some of their smell comes from. It smelled like, anyway, he went over there and got the T-shirt with the dog and wiped it all over his legs. Because he comes back, and I'm just like, God, who the hell smells like dog shit? Where did you all throw the damn shirt? And I realized that he's, the one that smells like dog shit. and I just, kind of made obviously, the reaction of disgust about it. And I even I was like, man, that's gross. That's disgusting. You're not going to hang around the camp smelling like dog. This is gross. And I don't know. I mean, for whatever reason, I must have got my point across, and he must have, for what, I guess I convinced him, because he ran off, and 15 minutes later he came back and didn't smell like dog anymore. And I guess he went down to the creek, which was, about that far. It would have taken him about that long to get there and back, and wiped and washed it off. So, I mean, I got him to wash off the dog just by more or less expressing complete disgust at it, because it smelled like it was awful, And so I think some of their smell comes from them using things like excrement and probably dead animals as a scent mask. Now, they also give off a musky smell too, and it's almost something that they can control, because I smelled that not on this trip, but on the other camping trip at one point when I got too close early on and was startled by something down in the brush. I also, smelled that real heavy musky smell, which is it's almost like a really strong apocrine gland smell. So they probably have some ability to do that, but they also clearly use foul-smelling things, and I would guess dead animals and excrement to cover up their own scent. Maybe that's possible. But, people talk about them just having this absolutely foul odor. Now, he didn't have that all the time. I mean, it smelled great. And, of course, I stunk really bad on that first camping trip, because after roughhousing with him, I smelled like him. And I told you that on part 2 that the guy who we got a ride on the side of his dump truck had to roll the window up and told me I smelled like a dead animal rolled in shit when I asked him. So there you go. But I don't remember him being incredibly foul smelling on this one, other than when the dog was used as some sort of I don't know, whatever that was he was doing. So there's these kind of primitive things that they do. This doesn't strike me as something that's unusual, though, for a large predator like that. If they want to cover their scent up.
Yeah, I agree. They might be able to cover up their scent with something foul, and I do think that they're able to bathe themselves and clean themselves up, because the Sasquatch that I encountered had really clean coats of fur.
Yeah, he had a good sheen on his fur, and that's another thing. He did. I'm jumping around a bit here. I'm just, I keep saying that, but I'm going to have to, because the sequence of all this, I don't remember necessarily which point of this came first and which came second, between the deer and I haven't gotten to where he broke the top out of a spruce tree twice. He broke tops out of spruce trees and threw them on the fire. The first one, I was napping when that happened. That must have been sometime around or before he got the deer. And I look over to see this conflagration at the fire, and it's not that dry, but it's dry enough to where this freaks me out, because I don't want a forest fire as a result of our fun that night. And so what he had done is he had broken the top off a spruce tree and made it about the size of a Christmas tree is what he did, and threw it on the fire. And you know how the spruce, if they're green, they'll just smoke, and then all of a sudden, then once they dry out, everything will go up at once. And I got on them for not having broken the thing up, and they're like, well, you know what, we're not going to argue with him. We're not going to, make him do this or do that. That's you. And so he got another top of a spruce tree, about 6 or 7 foot section, and went to throw it on the fire. And I no, we're going to break this up in pieces. And he wasn't really happy with my intervention there. There again, he didn't make any, really threatening or aggressive kind of gestures towards me. But I'm like, no, we're not going to set the forest on fire tonight. No way. Like, we'll break this thing in pieces and do it. And eventually he sort of relented there, and I started breaking branches and throwing them on the fire. But he was very annoyed that I didn't want him to just throw the whole top of the tree on the daggone campfire. And I'm like, man, I mean, we're not in a drought. We're not in a no fire period. We're not really close to the forest, but I mean, there could be wind or something like that, and it's dry enough. I'm not a big fan of this method of we're not going to have a bonfire up here. He would have been happy, I think, to break tops out of spruces all night long and throw them on the fire and make a big bonfire. Now, when he did it the first time, when it did finally catch on flame, it freaked him out and he ran away from it. So his understanding of fire was there. Okay, I know these things burn, but he didn't have a sense of how to control it in any way. I don't know that they do ever control fire, although I've heard stories about them doing it. And I'm sure that they can see the obvious. They're not stupid at all. And this is obvious. These things burn. If, you do this, okay, you get a fire. But in terms of how to manage it or something like that, I don't think they have any sense of that. So, but his coat, I wanted to go back to that because people talk about this cloaking kind of thing that they can do. And their coat does have a very interesting luster. And you tell me, Miguel, about the one that you encountered. Did you notice the coat just having a nice sheen or luster to it that was almost had a reflective quality?
Yeah, I noticed the hair had like this shine to it.
Okay. Somehow he was able to, right there in front of you while you're watching him, he was able to, I wouldn't say go entirely invisible, but he was able to make himself almost reflective so that he just reflected the background or whatever was around him. And it was stunning because it was at one point I couldn't see him. And I'm like, where? And my buddy said, he's right there, man. Can't you see? I mean, you can see the shimmer and all that. And I'm like, holy, how does he do that? He could not do it, though, when I held his arm. I didn't grab it like aggressively, but I held his arm and looked at him and was like, okay, do it now. Down by his wrist. And his arm's huge. So when you do that, you kind of realize, wow, if this dude wanted to, he could just tear me limb from limb like his arm is a freaking, like a powerlifter's leg or something. But he wouldn't do it. He pulled his arm away, then he could do it. So he kind of put on a little, demonstration or performance or whatever, and I was blown away by that. I don't know what he was doing, but it looked like, and somehow he was making his hair stand up is the only thing I could think. And in doing so, it gave it this hyper-reflective quality. That's a rational explanation of it, but that's the only one I have. And like I said, he didn't do it when I was actually touching his arm. That's the only thing I tried to touch, but he could pull his arm off, away from my hand, and then he could step back and do it. And right in front of me, make himself go from visible to damn close to invisible. And that was pretty wild. I never saw him demonstrate wood knocks or whatever we're calling wood knocks, which some people don't think it's wood knocks. They think it's them beating on their chest, kind of the way an ape does. I don't know. If he did, I don't remember it, and that's unfortunate because at the time I didn't know about wood knocks as being, such a telltale sign of them. But it would have been cool to have to known if he was able to demonstrate what in the world they're actually doing when we're calling it wood knocks. Are they actually knocking on wood, or are they doing something else? And I don't remember that demonstration at all. But he was putting on a show for us. I mean, he showed us that. He showed us what he could do to a deer, obviously, and he was also fascinated by these little figurines I had, which was kind of spiritual thing, and they have a spiritual quality. I had one, it was Shiva and Kali, and then I had another one totally unrelated, that's Hindu, and there's another one's unrelated, Carnunos, and, it's like the green man or horn god or whatever of old Europe or something like that, and, this was my thing, but I put them on that rock, and they were kind of little special things to me. I still have one to this day, not the Shiva Kali one, but the Carnunos one. And he went over to that rock that I talked about sitting on in part 2, and there was like it's my little spot. Everybody who goes up there to the meadows and camps there knows what I'm talking about. He picked those things up and looked at them on multiple occasions. I mean, he was fascinated by them. And he never hurt them. He didn't slam them down. He didn't try and break them. He didn't test them for integrity or anything like that. But he was very interested. He was fascinated by them. And sometimes he put them on the ground behind the rock. And he'd go back there and look at them again and try and figure out what they were and what I was doing with them. And it was interesting because I don't think he understood what they were necessarily, but he had a sense of they were important in a way, and he held them with some kind of care for them because they would have been easy for him to break even by accident.
So he had like the personality of a dog, you said?
Well, no, that was what my buddy said. He said his mentality. He didn't say personality, but his mentality. I think he was a little deeper than that. When he had a spiritual kind of sense about things. I mean, I think animals do too. So this isn't to take away, but no, my buddy said he had a mentality similar to a dog and similar to a kid at the same time, in his curiosity and his playfulness,
So was the creature alone every time you encountered it?
Yeah, I've never seen two of them at once. I was one time followed by who I believed to be Erie on Robertson Mountain and then heard one scream off in the distance who I think was his father calling for him. And that was a little bit of a different scream than the what I said sounded like a race car revving up in the distance. But that was the only time I know I was around two, but I didn't actually see the father at the same time. So I've never seen two of them at once. I've never seen a female. And so he was by himself there, yeah. And I wasn't the only one that knew about him being up there. I'm surprised nobody else has told a story about an encounter up there, although there is a BFR report from '06 that seems to describe him, and I mentioned that. But this was more like, 98. So, I mean, other people had to have encountered him. As curious as he was, I can't imagine I was the only one that he ever came around, although I don't know if anybody else had encounters that close or not. But as much as people camp up there and hike up there and even hunt up there, I mean, and there was, I know people in Elkins at times back in the, mid-2000s said, oh, yeah, I've heard of a Bigfoot up there in Dolly Sods. But I don't know if it was the same one or not. And there's also was a sighting that's been reported over in the Canaan Wildlife Refuge area, which is not far from nearby for them. I mean, these guys can move 50 or 60 miles through the woods in a day the way we move 10, And so, any one of them could go easily from Roaring Plains or even Green Knob and Port Crayon all the way to Canaan Valley and the Wildlife Refuge and Stony River all easily in a day. No problem. As rough as that country is and as marshy as it is in some areas and as rocky as it is and as dense as the rhododendrons are, I don't think these guys would have any problem with it. They probably like it. In fact, that's probably why I like areas like that, because bear hunting is very difficult to do in areas that rough. Most people I know that bear hunt with dogs try not to go places that they don't have a road at the bottom and at the top of the same mountain. Because if your dogs get lost, like say, for instance, this is another area of the state, but if you're bear hunting on Black Mountain and your dogs go down the west side of Black Mountain or west of the scenic highway, and anyone from this area knows, that area, it's a nightmare trying to find them. And you end up just hunting the dogs anyway. So you want roads that kind of encircle where your dogs are. And so this area has a lot of areas that would not permit that. I mean, you could get your truck up the road, you could let your dogs run and chase bear. But if they decide to go down that steep east rim, or they decide to go back up in some of that, rough area, really anywhere on the east rim of Roaring Plains, you're going to have a nightmare getting to them. And you're not going to drive any further than that point either, than where the pipeline swath is. Same thing with Dolly Sods. If you're bear hunting off of Dolly Sods, off the road that goes along the Allegheny front there, I mean, it's so marshy and rough, chasing your dogs off trail there could be very difficult. So I would say for, anything like Sasquatch, that's a great area to be, because the one time of year that you may get bothered by, you know, a large, people out there hunting and stuff like that would be during bear season. Not that people wouldn't deer hunt out there or so forth, but it's just very rough, and the dogs will run off, do all kinds of stuff. So, it would be to their advantage to be in areas like that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that's the only area that they're going to be, though. I mean, I'm hearing stories in places like Ohio and Michigan, and I'm just going, God, man, these things are around in there, and I mean, there's roads and farms and everything. Even where you have big areas of woods, it's not that big of an area of woods, So, they're clearly very good at hiding, but West Virginia definitely has some areas that are very dense and wild and rough, and even the bear hunters will, for the most part, try to avoid them. And most people don't go off trail. This is what I also said about Shenandoah Park. It's rough off those trails. Rocky, you twist an ankle or sprain a knee or something like that, it could be the end for you. I mean, they're gonna have searches for you, especially somewhere like that. And every so often, someone does get lost up there. They get down in a ravine, and luckily in the Shenandoah Park, you just go to the bottom. It really up in West Virginia too. Most areas, if you just went down to the bottom of the mountain and followed the creek down, you'd eventually come to a road. But that could be a while, and if it's dark and cold, it could be really rough. And if you're hurt, then just forget it. This is, I'm kind of, going off a tangent here on that, but yeah.
Okay. Are you anticipating on running into that creature again?
No, and it's very unfortunate because I've been up there numerous times since then. I went on a winter hiking, just a day hiking trip with another buddy of mine, and we did run into tracks, which were probably his. And we did not encounter him, probably a good thing, because the friend of mine I was with was getting very nervous following the tracks. I tried to tell him that they were snowshoe tracks, and he said, "These aren't snowshoes, dude. He's 6'4", and he said, I can't match this stride." And also, because we were actually following the tracks up toward the meadows from the road at that point, and that was in the winter. It was snow on the ground. And then he looked closer at the tracks and said, "Dude, they've got toes. These fucking tracks have toes." And I was like, "Man, who's gonna be up here barefoot running in the snow like that?" And this other friend of mine, he didn't believe anything to do with Bigfoot, but he looked at me and he said, "Are there Bigfoot up here?" And I said, "Oh man, it's not that wild up here." And I was just going, God, I hope we don't run into him, because this buddy of mine is going to freak out if he sees this guy, if he sees Erie. But we didn't run into him. The tracks ended up veering toward the north, and we veered toward the south. And so I saw his tracks then. But no, I've been up there camping multiple times since then, since 2004 and 2005, and then I probably had a couple years I didn't go up there, and I camped up there last year and the year before, and I've never seen, heard anything. I did see a couple years ago, pretty close to those meadows where I camped, one of those kind of tree structures. But, I don't know, was that, one that was that a Sasquatch's doings, or was that, some camper up there doing that? It's hard to tell. But it was one of those crisscross kind of weird tree structures, and one of the friend I was with said, "That trees just fall like that?" I said, "I don't think they fell like that, but I can't tell you for sure how they got that way." But no, I haven't run into them. And I took lots of camping trips and day hike trips. Heck, I took my brother up there. I've taken my cousin up there. I took my mom up there when the road was open, so she only had to walk up the pipeline swath. I mean, I took lots of family up there and friends, and never really anticipated seeing them on just a day hike anyway. But the last I even heard anybody else mention that he was up there was 2006. And that was somebody who was actually pretty familiar with hiking in that area. But they called him the Hairy Man. They called him the Hairy Man of Roaring Plains. So I have not. I don't know what happened to him. I think about it all the time. I hope that he had a family. I hope he never got hurt and it was able to find a female and have a family, because I'm sure that For them, that's probably even more important than for us because their population is not that large. They're fewer and further between than even, I don't know. It's like, we kind of compare them to the cougars that are officially not in our forest, but people know we have cougars. And I know people who have caught them on game camps and seen them. And, the most amazing thing is that they're able to have breeding pairs and continue. And, is inbreeding a problem with them? I don't know. It could be. Inbreeding can be a problem with with wild animal populations that are very low as well. If there's a lot of natural culling, the natural culling will get rid of the ones that have all the expressed recessive traits that are unwanted. But I can't sit here and pretend to know anything about the breeding habits of Bigfoot. It would just be a speculation, But you can kind of imagine, okay, there are not that many of them, and they are reproducing. And how do they avoid inbreeding, or do they? Or do they know? And how do they find each other? I mean, maybe some of those tree structures and, things that they leave have to do with that. It could be some of them saying, hey, I'm around if, there's a female looking to start a family.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Do you have any more stories that you'd like to add?
No, I think I covered the interesting parts of that. It's a little bit disjointed, and hopefully it's not too anticlimactic. A lot of people were really, hoping that I would do a part 3, and I certainly appreciate the good feedback I had. There's a lot that I left out, but just for time's sake, But yeah, I think of Erie all the time and wonder, did he have a family? Is he still even alive? Did he stay in the same area? Did he go back to Shenandoah Park? I don't know. I never hear. I don't know if there have been some recent sightings in the Blue Ridge. There are always sightings in the Blue Ridge. And of course, I grew up on the, slope right at the bottom of the Blue Ridge. And I, as a kid, learned about wild people once I'd seen one, but, come to find out that the people who were from there and had lived there for a long time, especially, to my experience, all the older black people that had been there who were very heavily American Indian in their ancestry as well, all knew about them. Didn't want them around, but they all knew about them. And they warned their kids. I mean, sometimes I meet one childhood friend. I've talked to her recently, and I remember asking, I said, you remember, she's actually the daughter of the lady who I called, oh God, what did I give her names? I didn't want to use her real name in the first part, but she's her daughter. And I said, remember being told about wild people and warned about wild people? She said, oh yeah. We were always told, don't go play around them creeks at night. Don't go play in this area. Don't go play by them creeks, and wild people might come down there and take you away. So it wasn't a mysterious thing. And that's another thing about the, origin of them. I mean, the American Indians didn't classify them as interdimensional or like godlike or something like that. They classified them as another type of person. And I tend to defer to that to some extent in looking at their origin, their ideology in a way. Is like, okay, the American Indians had their classifications for gods and spirits and that kind of thing. They had their classifications for just, animals like bears and deers and wolves and so forth. And they clearly saw these guys as, as much a part of the animals as we are, but as another type of person. And from my experience and interaction, that makes, very good sense. But I do think something else is aware of them. What, I don't know. And why and how, no idea. But there is something to the orbs, to the lights, and whatever that was not animal. That was not a plant. That was not something that I can explain from Earth terrestrial biology, will say, or fauna. That's something else, and what that knows or has to do with them, I have no idea. But there's something there. I don't know that says anything about their origins, but something I think has befriended them in a way, or at least taken an interest in them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sasquatch are usually elusive. Why do you think the Sasquatch came out and interacted with you guys all night?
I think he knew me because I came across him as a young one in Shenandoah Park. And this is why, not the fear, not the terror and all of that. That doesn't mean that the next one I see in the woods, I'm going to walk up to and slap five with and be like, hey, what's up, homie? Because I may see one that does not want me there and is very clear about it and is acting somewhat aggressively, and it's going to scare the shit out of me. Because if this one had wanted to, he could have done anything physically he wanted to do to all three of us. So I'm not suggesting that story is, that my experience is somehow translatable to everyone else, or that everyone else should do what I did. I was lucky. I had a sequence of events in every case where there was, after that first case where I run into a young one and he follows me and my dog. After that, there's familiarity. And I have had, I have another interaction where, I'm laying on a picnic table. I mean, I'm in the most vulnerable position I could possibly be. And not that it would matter. I could stand up and be ready to fight. It wouldn't make any difference. I mean, he could do anything he wanted to me or to anybody else. But I was familiar with this one by that point. So by this time, I've, had, this would be really the fourth time I've encountered him over years, but nonetheless, it's the fourth time. This is a special case, and I'm lucky, and I'm embarrassed that I squandered kind of the ability to get to know him better. I mean, it's not that I didn't go back up there, but I ended up moving to Colorado, and there were several years I never went back to Roaring Plains, probably till 2004. Actually, no, I take that back. When I came back to Virginia from Colorado, I took a couple day trips up there, but didn't run into him. So, yeah, if I ran into him up there at Roaring Plains, I knew I'd say a couple words to him and hope he recognized me, and he probably would. But, if I ran into another one, it'd be a whole different ball game. I don't know. It would depend on that situation. I can tell you that, the reason I had good encounters and that he came around was just because of familiarity, and we already knew what to expect,
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And maybe he saw you as a friend or like a brother.
Well, clearly he saw me as, somebody who was cool to hang out with anyway for a little while. Maybe he wanted to be closer friends than what ended up becoming. I don't know. I do kind of play the what ifs in my head. I think at one point I just took for granted he'd always be up there, and that, if I saw him, it'd be cool. And if not, he's living his life doing his thing. I don't think that it would ever be good for one to get dependent on people or get too close to people in general, because, well, this person might be cool and know who you are, but, the average person is not going to be like, oh, he's one of the friendly ones. They may be absolutely terrified, and when people are scared, they might go get the, 270 or the 7mm or the 30-30. And, I hear a lot of stories of people saying, well, I was terrified. I, raised my rifle. In some cases, they don't shoot, thank goodness, because I'm hoping that if you don't have to shoot one, you wouldn't. I mean, at the very least, there are two scenarios here. One, you don't believe in them, right? You don't think they exist. I know lots of people like this, and I always tell them, well, then don't ever shoot one, because if you don't believe in them, then what the hell are you shooting at? And the other one is, okay, well, there's several scenarios, I guess, but you run into one, you accept that they exist. They're not being a threat to you. They're not endangering you. They're probably just curious. And why would you want to harm them? I mean, what are you going to do with it? I've heard people say, well, then you can prove they exist. And I'm like, that's not how that works. They have been shot, and you're going to be quickly, once word gets out, I guess you could take one and hide it in your house and nobody would know, or in a freezer or something like that, if you have one of the big giant freezers. But how are you going to get it there? And number two, if you go and if this word gets out, it's going to get confiscated by the guys with the, un, unclear origin from some bureaucracy, and you're going to be told it was a bear and don't say anything more about it. I mean, I've heard these stories too. I don't know anyone that's happened to, but anyone who's listened to Bigfoot stories has kind of heard that. Yeah, you're not going to prove to the world that they exist by killing one and go drive around with it in the back of your pickup truck.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of and if one is threatening you, well, then you do have you have a right and duty to protect your own life. But, I think that there are a lot of dangerous animals in our forests, and we don't, we usually just treat them with deference and respect and keep a distance from them, whether it's bison or grizzly bears or moose. If we're not actively hunting them, we try to just make sure we don't have a violent encounter. I would far rather encounter a Bigfoot that was angry than an angry grizzly bear, because at the end of it all, Bigfoot might just be trying to get you out of the area. You certainly hear a lot of stories like that. If an angry grizzly bear is coming at you, you better be unloading on him, or you're going to just get grabbed and shaken 3 or 4 times and be dead, or 4 or 5 times, or however many it takes. I mean, I've never heard of somebody. I've never been around grizzlies in. I've been to like Yellowstone and places like that, but I don't even remember seeing grizzlies close up, way off in the distance with binoculars. So and I don't know how to deal with grizzlies, but I would rather encounter a Bigfoot than a grizzly bear that was angry with me. Let's put it like that. I think I'd have way better chance with the big guy than with the grizzly. And we don't try to get rid of grizzlies, and we don't try to get rid of bison, and we don't try to get rid of moose or polar bears or any of these animals, even though they are very dangerous,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's, where that goes. But yeah, I mean, I think they're stealth because they've had to be for a long time. And I'm sure there were probably more of them at one time. That's why we don't find the skeletons or whatever. I don't know that we don't. Maybe we do. I've said that, and maybe they are, confiscated like the dead ones are. But I don't know anything about that from experience either.
Yeah, I think they're just like misclassified. Like a lot of the ancient Neanderthal or primates that they find could actually be Bigfoot.
Well, if you had one this big, like if Erie's skull, and he wasn't even big compared to some of the ones I've heard about. I mean, at the time that I saw him last, he was probably a little over, 7'2" or something like that. Lean, muscular. If his skeleton was found, it would be clear that his skull was not human, but it was human-like. It wasn't like heavily conical or anything like that, but just the size of his face and the size of his skull and everything. It was the size of his hands, the size of his feet. I mean, that would have been like, what in the hell am I looking at here? But giant skeletons have been found. Now, I think he had a more robust skull than what most giant people would have. But I mean, if you look at an Andre the Giant or somebody like that, Erie's face was wider than that. I don't know how big Andre the Giant's skull was, but Erie definitely had a peculiar kind of mouth. It was very wide, and big teeth. He had some big old canines too. It was like some big old fangs, but they didn't come out of his mouth. So it would be hard to look at his skull if you saw it and say, oh, yeah, that's just a giant person. You just, wait a minute, there's something different about this. And I'm not going to say they all look the same or have the same morphology either,
Yeah, for sure.
But there's another story I've heard of a logger in this county who saw one somewhere around Watauga State Park back in the 80s, I think, walking up the road. First, he thought it was a man. He didn't tell me the story. Somebody else told me the story. He said, I thought that was a man walking up the road and thought, oh, my God, that's a big man. And once he's got a good look at him through the scope, he said, holy, he wanted to shoot him because he said, nobody will believe this if I tell him. He said he must have been about 8 feet tall, about 3 to 4 feet wide at the shoulders. And as soon as he got him in the scope, the Sasquatch must have noticed it or known it, because he took off to the left, bolted down the riverbed, and that logger said he pursued him. He actually followed him down there. I don't know what kind of rifle he had, but he saw his tracks going down the riverbed, but never saw him again. And I thought, well, thank God you didn't shoot him just for, the attempt to try to prove to everybody that your story wasn't fake, But, I mean, these things probably have happened more often than I know of, where somebody hunting sees one and first thinks, who is that? Because in the shadows, in the trees and everything, you may at the distance think it is a man, until they get a little closer and closer. You realize, gee, look how big he is compared to everything, and people around here pretty much know everybody that's going to be out there. So, they know there's nobody around they know that's that big,
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
They kind of stick out. Well, William, I think that pretty well covers your story, and you did an excellent job at telling these experiences and encounters, and I really want to thank you for being a guest on the show again.
I appreciate it. I hope this one wasn't too much jumping around. And like I said, there's things I left out. I at one point would like to do maybe some sort of stream if you want, and hopefully I don't have too many you-knows in this one either. I think I might have cussed a little less in this one.
Yeah, but, that'd be really cool to get you on a video chat. And
I wish we could go up there. I mean, it's not that we're going to see him necessarily. Like I said, I've been up there for years and I haven't heard about him up there, but, maybe another one. But I would love to go up and show some of the spots and places and things like that. That would be cool.
Yeah. Well, if I'm ever in the area, I'll get in contact with you. We're friends now. So
let me know in advance so I can get off work.
Yeah, I'll remember the names like Roaring Plains and all that. I might find myself in that area one day, and I'll be like, you know what? This is where William lives at, or where he had his encounters at. So I'll contact him.
Well, and I live about 3 hours from there now, but there is lots of country in West Virginia, from the southern end of the state all the way up to the north, that is full of Bigfoot stories. I mean, of course, so is Ohio, which is far less wooded and less remote. Virginia as well. North Carolina, Tennessee apparently has lots of stories. Pennsylvania, I actually talked to somebody who did wilderness trail maintenance, and he said that he knew they were around in the cranberry country here because he could hear them, but he said never saw one, or they freaked him out. But he said actually he thinks there are more of them in Pennsylvania, which kind of surprised me, but not really, because it's north central Pennsylvania, up in Allegheny National Forest, and some of those areas up there near like Oil City and Warren, and that area, pretty wild areas up there. So, and then God knows the Adirondacks or somewhere like that would be great habitat for them. So the East is full of them, but you live in an area that's, of course, in Missouri, the Current River area, or what's the other river that's, there's several rivers that run through that area.
Yeah, there's a bunch. I live by the Merrimack River.
Merrimack, there's another one. I mean, that area has just, tons of stories about them. Mm-hmm. So you're in a good area already.
Yeah, there's a lot of waterways around here, and I'm sure it's the same way where you're at.
Yeah, we don't have the lakes that like New England and up that way does. We don't have natural lakes in the state. All our lakes are reservoirs, except for one. But yeah, there's, plenty of creeks and things of that nature for them to follow, because that was what I was told as a kid. They follow the creeks. They follow them creeks at night. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully the next time you encounter a Sasquatch, it's not a bad encounter and it's another positive one, and hopefully you can document some of the activity, because I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I hope. It's been 23 years since roughly 23 years. And I've heard wood knocks that I'm pretty sure were a couple of them as recently last year, but on Allegheny Mountain.
Yeah.
But that's that's as close as I've come. I mean, and to be honest, I mean, I haven't really gone and probed around in that, those laurel thickets and stuff like that off of Sugar Creek. There's some areas where if I really wanted to find one, that I would probably concentrate there. I'm not saying I would, but it probably wouldn't even be Roaring Plains where I would actually focus my efforts. But those areas are, I figured I never tried to find one before, you know. I never went out looking for one. I know that they're in the forest. I know you may run into one, but I never tried to. So it's kind of on their terms. It's probably, you know, I don't know if I would, you know. That's not to discourage anybody. I mean, of course, what you're doing is you know, trying to find them. And I certainly wish you the best of success with that, and also safe encounter if you have one, and maybe you'll have a pleasant encounter, you know. I certainly wouldn't want to run into one that was angry, and if they warned me to get out of the area and I could tell it was a warning to get out, I would heed the warning.
Yeah. I definitely want to run into the little juvenile that I seen, and that's kind of my goal, is to interact with it the same way you did. But I doubt that'll ever happen, but it's a possibility.
Well, he'll grow up, and they'll, once they start growing, they'll grow pretty fast, I'm pretty sure. You know, I don't know, how big was the one you're talking about?
No, he's probably about 4 feet, 4.5 feet.
Oh, like, he is a young one.
Yeah, he's a little guy.
Yeah, he's a little guy. Yeah, I'd be more worried about mommy and daddy than I would him, obviously. But especially daddy. But yeah, one time at some point you know, you very well might, and yeah, I don't know how to do it. It's happened to me by accident. I know they do you know, certain things they like is music. They don't like dogs, but I've had dogs around. Luckily, it wasn't a big, you know, well, actually, it was a mastiff one time. Big dog, but not a mean one.
Mm-hmm. If I encounter another Sasquatch again, do I point at myself and say Lakota or Tacona, or try to make it?
You can try it.
Yeah, I want to try it.
I don't know if the language is the same across the country or not. I mean, you cross the Mississippi River and the Ohio River, and I don't know how widespread their languages are. That's a good question. I've heard that out in the Pacific Northwest, there's a story that they kind of understood. Oh God, what's the language out there? It was some language out there. That they actually understood a little bit of. There was a story out there where somebody said that they recognized one of the Indian languages. This is out there somewhere near Whistler, in that area.
Yeah, I believe that.
What is the language out there? What is the language out there that they... Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
The Douglas Indians. Somebody said that they kind of, you know, somewhat understood some of the words that the Douglas Indians used. Of course, the Douglas Indians probably have another name, but Douglas sounds like a European name, so...
Yeah, I could see that being a possibility.
But he had words for stuff. He had words for the animals. He had words, at least he could distinguish between the spruce and the oak and the mountain ash. I don't know if he had a name for that, but I told him it was mountain ash.
So a distinct language for sure.
And all that. Huh?
A distinct language for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it wouldn't shut up. Once he got comfortable, he wouldn't shut up. I don't know if he probably stopped recording the main part of the show, but that's something that there was probably a 30-minute period there where he didn't shut up. He just probably went on for damn close to 30 minutes, and God knows what he was saying, but he didn't probably take much of a breath for that long, honestly. So, which was a big contrast to the first encounter up there where he talked a little bit, but not like that. I mean, he didn't just nonstop ramble, but on this encounter, he definitely did. Once he got comfortable, he got into everything. He wanted to check everything out, and no, he talked constantly.
Yeah, that is interesting. All right, William. Well, I think that pretty well covers your story, and I appreciate everything that you shared with me.
I'm sure I've left stuff out, but I could sit here all night saying, oh, yeah, and this, and oh, yeah, and this, you know, and that doesn't help you with the editing at all, so.
No, it's all right. You gave me plenty of info, and I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate it, too, and I hope it turns out well. I hope it's not too anticlimactic or disappointing. Everybody's like, oh, God, I want to hear part 3. I hope they don't go, part 3 wasn't that great.
Yeah. Well, they'll understand it more if they listen to part 1 and part 2.
Right. Well, Miguel, keep up with me, man, and I'm going to keep up with your show. I appreciate what you're doing. I certainly, you've had some really good guests on, I haven't heard everybody. JB was great. Blake, the guy from out there, Grand Mesa, also. And if you ever get a chance to go out to Grand Mesa, that's an amazing area, I'm sure. I never went out there when I was in Colorado. I was in Lake County. I never went there. I wanted to ask you something. What do you think about the video that came out recently from Silverton?
Well, I thought it looked interesting, but I guess the BFRO guys got on Twitter X and said it's fake and that there's a costume shop nearby, and they're sharing pictures of these people wearing a Sasquatch costume in that area during that time.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to think now.
Well, the only thing got me, I wanted to know what his height was. But the thing that got me was that his lower legs on that video, it did look sort of like that was a costume fit because, you know, Erie's medium brown fur covered his body very, you know, thick and densely. It wasn't on his face, but down at his lower arms, it wasn't quite as dense. You could actually see skin through it. And his lower legs as well. It wasn't that he had this, you know, heavy fur all the way to his feet. As you got lower on his legs, and I remember this from when I mentioned this in part 2, when he woke up in the morning and walked by and slapped the tent, I looked out and I just see his lower legs, and I'm just like, good God, his lower legs are monstrous. They're huge. But I could see skin through the hair or fur there, you know, down by his ankles and everything. And his feet had hair on them, but they weren't heavy fur covered. And it was close to his, you know, it fit around his calf and everything. Whereas the costume looking thing, people are saying his leg looked like a costume because even though the sheen was real good and the movements and stuff were, you know, pretty decent, that way that fur was on his lower leg is not what I've seen. But now I'm not saying I've seen everything. But yeah, I kind of left reserved judgment on that. I said, well, somebody's doing a really good job here, but I want to know what a height estimate on that one is.
Yeah, I do too.
Because if he's estimated to be 8 feet tall, I'm going, okay, who the hell's wearing an 8 foot tall? Who's 8 feet tall wearing a suit like that and moving like that? But it did kind of look suit-like to me in a way. I was like, that's not how Erie looked, but, you know, Erie's only one of them.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It could be real, and no one will ever know.
If you did want to get everybody stirred up, that'd be a great thing to do, is put one of those suits on and go hang out by the Durango-Silverton Railroad.
Yeah, because you know no one's going to shoot you from one of those trains.
No. And, you know, it's a good, if it's a suit, it's a pretty damn good one.
Yeah.
But the lower legs just threw me, and I only looked at it with 350 times magnification, and I said, man, you know, and also the line at the butt. You know, Erie didn't really have that. Erie was lean. He was muscular, but he was lean. He was built like his upper body, his chest and shoulders and everything, any bodybuilder would be jealous as hell. His legs were very muscular, but they weren't really, really bulky, you know. And he had a very graceful movement, extremely graceful. Looked like he was gliding when he walked. So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing everything, William, and yeah, I'm gonna let you go for the night, but we'll keep in contact. And like I said, if you ever run into anything else ever again, feel free to reach out.
Oh, hell yeah. And if there's anything in this you want me to go back over, when you go to edit and you say, can you do this one again or something, or clarify this, I'd be happy to.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully
right.
In the future we can do a video chat, and maybe I can ask some questions, and we can talk about the details a little bit more.
Okay.
Well, you have an excellent weekend.
Be cool, man. You too, bro.
Yeah, be safe, man, and we'll keep in touch.
All right, you too, man. Have fun.
All right, take care, William.
Later.
Bye. All right, William, thank you so much for opening up and sharing your encounters with all of us, and it really means a lot, so thank you. Yeah, I have to agree with you that there has to be other people from around the area who have had the same experience as you and your friend. just because it seemed like the Sasquatch was comfortable with coming out to your guys' campsite and hanging out with you guys all night. Like, he maybe has a routine of doing that every now and then for that particular campsite, which would be really cool to go to. That'd be any researcher's dream. Let's go hang out at a campsite where Sasquatch will come out and hang out with you all night long. But Sasquatch are curious by nature, so it does make sense that one would do that every now and then, or something out of the norm. But yeah, I appreciate everyone for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and if you have a Bigfoot story you would like to tell, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Take care.